The last aspect of the history of first people to look at is their sex lives. While this is not a topic often taught in high school history courses, it is incredibly important to understanding both the evolution of mankind and their cultural values. Let's imagine that in 5,000 years an alien race from Venus arrives on the planet Earth and wants to chronicle the history of mankind. Can you imagine them telling the story of the United States without discussing the sexual norms and customs that are so persistent in our society? They shed light on the television shows we watch, the advertisements that cause us to buy products, human interaction, and even the taboo behaviors and social norms that we hold dear. There will be times throughout the course that we will discuss the history of sexuality or gender. However, this discussion will always be done through an academic and a historical perspective. Most of what we know about the sex lives of hunter-gatherers who lived before the agricultural revolution comes from two places. First, it comes from paintings and artwork that include erotic elements, and secondly, it comes from scientific research. And both of these elements have shown us that there is an emphasis on male sexuality and prowess, and also that these early people had a tendency to blur gender lines in sexual matters. Some scientists believe the reason that prehistoric man first walked on two legs or developed bipedalism was in order to receive access to higher food resources. These ancient human ancestors found mates the old-fashioned apish way. They fought with other males for access to the most fertile females. Success was measured by the number of their offspring, and it typically was had by macho men with sharp canine teeth and large testicles who tried to mate with as many ovulating females as possible. For men, the object of this sex game was to have sex with a woman as quickly as possible and to get it over and done with so that they could move on to the next female. According to some scientists, men have a biological imperative to create as many offspring as possible, and having multiple partners means more opportunity to do so. Evolutionarily speaking, this is probably why some animals, such as bonobos, developed penis bristles, bristles that would actually accelerate ejaculation during sex. The winners in this game, who were men, were those with the larger testicles, because they were seen as carrying a heavier load of sperm, and also those with sharp canine teeth, because they were believed to be protectors of women. Now, the women who were considered the winners were those who flaunted their fertility by displaying their swollen genitals. And the goal of this whole game was to get the big alpha male to come have sex so that they could get some of his big alpha genetic offspring. Over time, the smaller males with the stubby canines found out that they could entice those very fertile females into mating with them if they brought them some food. They realized that they were more successful at doing this if their hands were free to carry home large loads of fruits and tubers. Females would come to prefer good, steady providers with smaller canines over the big, fierce-toothed ones who left as soon as they spotted a new female. We sometimes see this phenomenon in the modern day. Often when one sees an extremely attractive lady with a rather nerdy-looking guy, they assume that he must be loaded and she must be a gold digger. But going all the way back to the beginning of human history, it seems likely that the female desire to partner with men who can provide them with resources and take care of them has been present. Perhaps this means that while the biological imperative for men is procreation, for women it is simply protection. When it comes to female sexuality, we know that based on the Venus or the Great Goddess figurines, what was considered attractive in a female was one who was plump, with large breasts and large hips. It represented good health and the capacity to have children. We also know that female clothing often stressed their sexual features by showing their breast or their cleavage, and that the dresses or skirts often had slits that showed pubic hair. In addition, the picture of the stone above is actually of ochre, which was found off the coast of South Africa about 70,000 years ago, and it is thought to be the remnants of the first lipstick. Now, this may ruin lipstick for you forever, but the purpose of lipstick in the Paleolithic era and just afterwards is that it was designed to make a woman's mouth look like her vagina in order to signal sexual availability to men. Archaeologists and anthropologists have also discovered Paleolithic artwork of female anatomy. The circle with a hash mark is drawn to represent the vulva. The primary source artifact located on the right side of the screen on the top is actually a 28,000-year-old sexual aid that was discovered in a cave near Ulm in Sweden. Through this particular primary source, as well as many others that have been found, we know that male sexuality focused mainly on the penis. Phallic imagery symbolized male potency and strength, and phallic sticks were often used in sex rituals as well as in religious ceremonies. Some manufactured jewelry to adorn the penis and ornaments have been found at grave sites. Many pierced, tattooed, or scarred the penis, and stone monuments that stressed the penis, sometimes with womb imagery as well, were erected. These always implied male sexual dominance. Some scientists have gone as far as to postulate that there were entire societies that worshipped the phallus. In modern society, many people recognize what is called a sex binary, in which humans belong to one of two sexes, either male or female. Some also believe in a gender binary, in which humans belong to one of two genders. Men are born with a masculine gender, and females are born with a feminine gender, while still others believe in a sexuality binary, in which one is either heterosexual or homosexual. Others have far different opinions. They see sex, gender, and sexuality as falling upon a continuum, or representing a spectrum, and that few people lie on polar opposite ends of this continuum. For example, scientists have found that 1 in 1,500 children is born with ambiguous genitalia, and a considerable number of people in North America alone have the sex organs of both a male and a female. Another example is that gender roles ascribed to men and women that were traditionally accepted in the 1950s have tended to be disproven in the modern day. This belief system was far more popular in the ancient world than it has been in modern history, as societies tended to have ambiguous and interchangeable gender roles, as well as open concepts of sexual partnerships. Keep in mind that the concept of sexual identity did not exist until the mid-19th century. While sex acts certainly existed prior to this, one's entire identity was not defined by their attraction to or action with another person in the bedroom. Transgender rituals of cross-dressing were common, for example in a Siberian bear ceremony in which everyone, priests included, dressed in clothing from the opposite sex. Many groups attached spiritual meanings to people who could transcend gender boundaries. Some priests or healers were transsexual or used tools associated with the opposite gender. In some groups, on the same basis, priests or shamans had intercourse with both sexes. In many Native American tribal groups, one could and still can find what are known as two-spirits, men who dressed and lived as women, took on the work roles and the gender roles of women, and often married other men. They were seen as spiritually powerful for having transcended the boundaries of gender, and it was believed that they could commune with the gods. Rarely, girls might be designated to dress and act as men. Outright bisexuality was also common. Among Native Americans, certain tribes featured, and some still feature, an initiation rite in which boys were taken to sleep in the men's house at the first sign of puberty, where a maternal uncle was supposed to penetrate each boy to make him strong, and to imbue him with semen so that he could be a fertile male himself. There was a great variety from one region to the next, but it seems many hunter-gatherer groups did not place firm boundaries between what we call heterosexual and homosexual characteristics and behaviors, even as they displayed a fascination with sexuality and with the power that accompanied the capacity to combine the sexual features of both genders. I know that for many people, this class is going to be your first exposure to the history of sexuality. And certainly we will not be discussing sexuality in all lectures, but it is an important part of history. I want you to keep in mind that we are studying it from a historical and a cultural perspective. This means that rather than making moral judgments, we are simply seeking to understand the truth about the past. Certainly, some of what we learn about some people we will find disagreeable or even difficult to imagine. One of the skills we are learning in world history is to abandon ethnocentrism, which is looking at the rest of the world and judging it through the lens of our own culture. Instead, we want to nurture cultural relativism, an anthropological view in which no culture is superior to any other when comparing systems of morality, laws, politics, sexuality, etc. All cultural beliefs are equally valid and the truth is relative, depending on the cultural environment. And while this idea of cultural relativism is the ideal, I realize that by our nature humankind is judgmental, and we are steeped in our own history since childhood. So what I really ask of students is that they garner all of the information and facts about a particular subject before forming an opinion or prejudging a culture or tradition. Such a practice will provide you each with an educational and ideological arsenal to back up your belief systems and to succinctly argue for those beliefs in the future. If you have a particular interest in further study on the history of sexuality, or you just want to verify the veracity of some of what I've taught you, there are two very good introductory books that I would recommend. The first is entitled Sexuality in World History, and it's written by Peter Stearns. And just to kind of give you an idea of the fact that the study of sexuality in history is in fact a legitimate historical field, Peter Stearns is actually a professor at George Mason University, and he was the provost there for about a decade as well. He has written at least one textbook on world history that is used in a great number of high school and college classrooms. And he was at one point the chair of the Department of History at Carnegie Mellon University. And he also founded and edited the Journal of Social History while he was at Carnegie Mellon. The second book I would recommend to you is a very well-written New York Times bestseller entitled Sex at Dawn: How We Mate, Why We Stray, and What It Means for Modern Relationships. It is written by Christopher Ryan and Casilda Jetha, and they attempt to debunk what we think we know about sex, and they weave together this overlooked evidence from anthropology, archaeology, primatology, anatomy, and psychosexuality in order to get a more full understanding of human sexuality. The authors then expose the ancient roots of sexuality and point to a fairly optimistic future illuminated by mankind's innate capacity for love, cooperation, and generosity.